So shaft comparison time. So we've got very, very recognisable shaft in the graphite design, the Tour DI, which stands for Deep Impact. So this shaft's been around, you know, a number of years on tour. Seen a lot of success with it for tour players over the years. Very, very recognisable from the colour scheme. You know, Jordan Spieth used it when he won the Open at Birkdale. Matsuyama's used the graphite design shaft. Very, very popular shaft. Great quality materials. And then also going to be comparing that to shaft by OBAN. So OBAN have been around sort of 10 to 15 years now. Similarly, you know, Japanese materials, made in Japan, great quality materials. But what's going to be interesting with these two is you've got a shaft that's been around for, yeah, say, 10, 12, 13 years. The bend profiles of these two are almost identical. So they're both, you know, butt stable, softer in the middle, stable in the tip. So in principle, a little bit of load through the middle of the shaft to help with a bit of launch. So they're not necessarily a low launching design, but then stable in the tip to keep spin down. So we've got two shafts of the same kind of design, but you know, this one launched last year and this one was over 10 years ago. So we can see, you know, as materials change and as they updated, you know, designs from these guys, how does the performance differ? So let's say start with the Tour AD. The Tour AD, as I say, been around a very long time, very, very trusted shaft in industry. And you know, this one stayed in their lineup for a very, very long time for good reason. So very much around kind of mid-launch, a little bit of feedback through the shaft, but stable in the tip. So let's get a few hits, get a bit of data performance-wise. So both shafts are kind of the Tour AD is around the 66 gram mark. The OBAN, the Isawa GLD is more of a 68 gram, 69 gram shaft, so a little bit heavier. So we'll get 3 or 4. I've decided on the TrackMan today to go with a very tight golf hole as the screen. So it's not a hard feeling shaft. You know, certainly it's a shaft that's very stable due to that stiff tip, but you do get a little bit of load, little bit of feedback through that midsection. So it's not the kind of shaft that's going to feel loose. Definitely gives you a little bit of kick through it, but it's not a harsh feel either. So you know, to stiffness, they don't play particularly stiff relative to the letter on them either. So typical to most graphite design shafts. So a reasonable batch of swings there, a little bit tugged on the last one there, but reasonable batch of swings there. So looking through averages on that shaft there is an average, you know, for me a little bit, you know, it's a slightly higher launching shaft than I would use. But you know, launch and spin fairly neutral, fairly kind of mid, maybe slightly upper mid. So a nice stable feeling shaft. You know, you get graphite design, you get great quality materials. You know, they've always been, you know, very, very high quality materials they've used. Hence, you know, price point wise, they're fairly strong. But what comes with good materials is a higher price. It's a very simple correlation that way around. So going to switch into the Isawa GLD. You say neither shaft's designed to be a harsh feeling shaft. I think, you know, what we're seeing more and more as time goes on, as the materials improve, you can get some stability without it having to be a hard feel. And part of that is, as the material grade gets higher, you've got more graphite in there and less resin. So you haven't got to layer up the graphite, layer up the amount of layers of the shaft to get stability. So by having the thinner wall, you get a little bit more play in it, but the higher quality material gives you the stability. So switch to this. A little higher on the face. Maybe a slightly tighter feel through the ball, very slightly. Both are very even balanced too. Neither's hard work to swing. Just held on to that a little bit. That's just going to go a little bit right. Just need to let the swing go a touch more. Again, similarly, you've got that same kind of stable at impact, but a little bit of recovery, a little bit of response. It's a shaft that if you want to feel the club doing something, you know, both these models give you something back. You haven't got to work it hard to get the response. A little bit lower on the face. I'll do one more there if I can get them. One more solid hit. Still slightly lower face contact. That's a poor strike. I'm going to do one more. That is operator error. I'm going to do one more hit just because that one's not going to give a fair representation because that was very low on the face. Let's give that one more hit. It's a better hit. Right. So I mean, the two shafts are structurally very, very similar. You know, so I've picked these two shafts mainly because if we look at the structure, the way they're built, the weight, the flight they're designed towards, zonally where they're stiff and soft, you know, grip end stable, tip stable, softer in the middle, that matches across. So really all we're going on really is they're you know, having the modern materials change the way they perform. You know, with the graphite design that's been around a long time, it's very well trusted. We have had material developments over the years. So, you know, both Japanese graphite. What can we see in performance? So, ultimately, the answer is not very much. You've got, you know, spin-wise, there's a 50 revolution variable between the two, and you know, launch angle less than half a degree. So, you know, what this goes to show is that you can, if you build the shaft a similar way with similar grade materials, no matter which company's making them, you're going to get similar results out of them. I think the one thing that I would go towards, there was a couple of, I didn't strike the Isawa shaft quite as well for that batch of shots. So we're seeing a little bit lower smash, a little bit lower efficiency, and as a result, a couple of yards less. But that's really down to ball speed. So, you know, the angle of attack, you know, 2.5 up, 2.8 up, you know, path slightly out to win. You can see that the swing patterns match one another. So it really comes down to, in many respects, the feel you get through the shaft. I think the one thing that stands out a little bit is that in the DI, the graphite design shaft, you can definitely feel it's that little bit more, it feels very slightly more stout. And not necessarily harsh, but just a little bit stiffer, very much down the bottom end. I think out of the OBAN shaft, the Isawa GLD, there's a little bit more pop all the way through the shaft. So very slightly smoother load through. And realistically, that's what you're going to get from the kind of the most modern materials where, so we've been able to thin out the layers of graphite, reduce the resins and things in them, the slightly different directional layerings of graphite, just help the shaft designers now to get the most feel relative to stability. And ultimately, you know, I mean, you know, one thing that, you know, the guys at OBAN have done here with this shaft is gone for a very, very, you know, it's a really great looking shaft. You know, it's really got some pop. That sort of ion plate, that shiny finish into that sort of gold base colour. It's a great looking shaft, but it probably feels just a little bit smoother all the way through. Consistency wise, you know, both good. So you can see from the dispersion patterns, I'll put it back onto that screen. As we can see from both of them there, bar one of them, the very right hand shot there is me, I could feel myself holding onto the club face. You know, very similar shot patterns with both of those. You know, peak height on the good hits, the same sort of height. If anything, slightly lower flight out of the OBAN shaft on the two that went a little bit left, very slightly, but you know, ultimately what you get from both products are great quality materials. Within great quality materials you get great consistency, but because one's at least 10 years younger than the other, you get slightly different feedbacks and feels through the shaft. So they're able to develop that feel and manipulate it so that you can get the feedback and the stability a little bit more easily. But you know, certainly if you've got an old faithful favourite, it's definitely worth looking at some of the newer models. If you're looking for something particularly with a little bit more responsiveness, to keep some of that spin stability and that structural rigidity. That's something that's very much doable now. But so OBAN, you will not find OBAN in very many places. They're very selective, a bit like Accra in that respect. They're very selective with where they have their stockists, and some of the stipulations are that they have to be built on site. So you're only going to find them in places that have a fitting and building outfit within the studio. So we've got pretty much all the OBAN range here. There are going to be some additions into the new year, from what I can tell, but we'll be out at the trade show in back end of January, having a look at those and hopefully getting a bit of video footage with the guys at OBAN, going over the new products. So if you want to come and test any of those out and compare with some of your old faithful models, let us know, come in, and we'll see what we can achieve.